Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Nurse Doug and I are here to talk to you a little bit about Trump and how he's stacking the deck so dangerously nationwide. Just under the radar, people aren't putting two and two together, which is why I always say focus on the big picture. You hear about U.S. attorneys and the people that he's trying to install or that he does install for U.S. attorneys. Now, U.S. attorneys are in charge of investigations of not just federal financial crimes and stuff like that, but all the state crimes like Medicaid crime and all that. I mean, a lot in fraud, business fraud. Who in Trump's orbit be, kind of curious about business fraud and U.S. attorneys in different states. Now, U.S. Attorney in Florida, Pam Bondi, at one point was actually the decision maker, for example, for Florida as a state to join the class action lawsuit against, say, some nefarious fraud that scammed tens of millions of dollars out of its citizens under an education. Oh, yeah, the Trump University, yeah. All the states had an option to actually be part of that suit, when it was proven that the entire Trump University was a fraud and he was ordered to pay $25 million. Well, the reason it was so little was because people like Pam Bondi, who ended up receiving a whole bunch of campaign donations from Ivanka Trump and Donald Trump after this. Pam Bondi decided not to include Florida in the class action suit. So the U.S. attorneys actually are very, very important in decision making as crimes are committed by different types of nefarious people, Trump administration. I mean, those people. Anyway, one of the things that he's doing to abuse the system, because he actually sees the guardrails in the system and he sets up his projects accordingly. For instance, Elon Musk. Elon Musk had 120 days because after 120 days, he can't be a independent or non-government, blah, 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 blah. So after 120 days, he either has to be appointed or whatever, or confirmed, or leave. Same with U.S. Attorney Generals. Now, for instance, Alina Habba was installed as U.S. Attorney General for New Jersey. There's a whole bunch of stuff she's already involved in that basically is unconstitutional, illegal, all sorts of stuff. Her 120 days is up. So President Trump has to appoint her replacement, when her replacement is appointed, she's basically hired as the assistant, which circumvents any appointment necessary for the next step. So when that replacement after the 120 days person comes in, basically Alina Habba is her own assistant on the books, so she can legally be hired to replace herself, which is kind of a really, really screwed up way to abuse a system. But when you're looking at the big picture, as we often talk about here, Revolution Washington, I know, Doug, I know, it's crazy. There's a U.S. attorney, Asalyi, who lost apparently 1/3 of the staff. This is another Trump U.S. Attorney General who lost a whole bunch of his staff, 1/3 of his staff, by doing things that were basically against everything in the beliefs of everyone in the office that they believed was illegal or dirty or whatever. For instance, this particular gentleman dropped a fraud case against a tax cheat that was one of Trump's very, very big donors. This guy is the guy who owned the Fatburger franchise. So got a lot of money. But so that attorney general dropped all of the cases against this gentleman who is a huge donation guy for Trump. Like Elon Musk, and when Elon Musk got to get rid of all the investigations from USAID, not to mention all the side bonuses of like starving children and taking away, birth control type of things for poor countries, all that other stuff that the United States very, very proudly helps with worldwide. But anyway, back to the U.S. attorney scam. You would think this is something that would be noticed. The whole 120-day thing, and then being on the books as their own assistant. So when they're fired, they're basically, as the little loophole, hired back in the U.S. attorney. So Alina Habba is going through that right now. Acelu went through that right now. New York State, there's a John Sarconi in upstate New York, another one who's done a couple of really, really big favors for a bunch of Trump donors. He did that. He became his own assistant, so he couldn't be kicked out of those jobs. And in Nevada, there's the Republican Chata, who apparently is like so evil, like 100 plus federal judges wrote a letter to say, do not let this woman hold on to her job. She's that bad. Similar is happening with Alina Habba. But yeah, she became her own assistant and held on to her job. So when I'm saying that something as important as a U.S. attorney for a state is being manipulated to where that 120 days of an abuse of power actually is parlayed into a full-time job because they're named their own assistant. This is a prime example nationwide of a big, huge piece of every state's puzzle. That's a real powerful piece to have in your pocket if you're trying to be an authoritarian. If you're looking for the dictator thing, state prosecutions and all that, it also helps you when you own properties in a bunch of different states and you're doing bad shit there too. So keep that in mind. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stay diligent, stay educated, and be kind. We are all in this together. My dog.